I'd like to call the Tuesday, August 4th, 2020 Papillion City Council meeting to order. Ms. Brown, would you please take the roll?
Sunday. Mumgard. Gaines. Glover. Jaworski. Klug. Stubbe. Ingberg.
Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. And do we have an affidavit of publication on file?
We do.
That current copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted in the back of the council chambers. We've got no presentations tonight. Ms. Powers, Administrator's Report, please.
Thank you. Council members, you'll notice that the city's second bike station was installed this week at the landing. This station complements the station that's at First Street Plaza, and we will continue to look at additional locations that provide opportunities for residents to use bikes to connect to the trails. Also, work is continuing on updates to the city's comprehensive plan. A joint meeting with the City Council and the Planning Commission to go over the updates will be scheduled for the end of September. And finally, there will be a Finance and Administration Committee meeting on August 18th, and the meeting will be held at the landing to allow for social distancing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilman Jaworski. Second by Councilman Gaines. Are there any proponents? Any opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
Eight yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item D1, Ordinance 1874, an ordinance approving the issuance of general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2020, with principal not to exceed $6 million. Is there a council member that will introduce? I'll introduce. Introduced by Councilwoman Klug. As is typical with our bond issues, staff has recommended a waiver of second and third due to timing issues to get out to the market. That does require a supermajority vote. Is there a motion to approve the second and third readings for Ordinance 1874? Motion by Ingberg, second by Gaines. Are there any proponents? Any opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote.
Seven yeas, 1 nay by Sunday.
Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 1874? Motion by Councilman Stubbe. Second by Councilman Jaworski. Any council discussion on that? Please vote.
Eight yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. And I do just want to point out that with this refunding, we're actually calling $500,000 worth of debt. The original refunding was going to be about $6.5 million. In our previous budget, the current budget year we're in, remember that we had set some money aside from cash reserves to start calling some debt. We're using a portion of this, so we're not refunding as much as we'd originally planned. So meeting your plan there. Item D2, Ordinance 1889, an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 1920 budget. Is there a council member that will introduce? I'll introduce. I can't see mouths moving with the masks. Councilman Gaines, thank you. Item D3, Ordinance 1890, an ordinance to adopt the fiscal year 2021 budget. Is there a council member that will introduce? I'll introduce. I saw Mr. Glover's hand and I heard Mr. Ingberg. I'll give it to Mr. Glover. Thank you. Item D4, Ordinance 1891, an ordinance to amend Table 20538 of Article 4 Zoning District Regulations of Chapter 205 of the Papillion Zoning Ordinance to allow custom manufacturing in the LC Limited Commercial District by Special Use Permit. The applicant is the City of Papillion. Is there a council member to introduce? I'll introduce. Introduced by Councilman Jaworski. Thank you. Item D5, Ordinance 1892, an ordinance to approve a change of zone from AG agricultural to R4 multifamily residential for the property legally described as a tract of land being part of Tax Lot 4, a tax lot located in the northwest quarter of Section 5, Township 13 North, Range 12 East of the 6 p.m., Sarpy County, Nebraska, generally located on the southwest corner of a South 114th Street and Schramm Road. The applicant is Felker Family Farms, Belterra. Is there a council member to introduce? I'll introduce. Introduced by Councilman Stubbe. Item F1. Resolution R20-0109, a request for approval of a special use permit to authorize the construction of a principal structure within the downtown overlay district pursuant to Section 205-118A1 and parking facility pursuant to 205-118A6 to add an additional dwelling unit with a garage and associated parking to expand the multifamily residential use established on the property legally described as the north two-thirds of Lot 7 and all of Lot 8, Block 12, Papillion, generally located at 243 North Jefferson. The applicant is Mark Jaksic. This was continued from the July 21st meeting, and since then, the applicant's unable to attend tonight because he was out of town, and he has requested a continuance to the August 18th meeting. So is there a council member that would make the motion to continue? Mr. Mumgard? Second by Councilman Stubbe. Are there any proponents? Opponents? Council discussion. Please vote on the motion to continue to August 18th.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F2, Ordinance 1879. The next 5 items are all related. Ordinance 1879, an ordinance to approve a change of zone from RE Rural Residential Estates to LI PUD2 Limited Industrial Specific Planned Unit Development for Lot 1 and LI Limited Industrial for Lot 2 for the property legally described as a tract of land located in the southwest quarter of Section 25, Township 14 North, Range 11 East of the 6 p.m., Sarpy County, Nebraska, generally located on the northeast corner of Highway 370 and Highway 50. The applicant is Ryan Companies. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 1879? Motion by Councilman Stubbe. Second by Councilman Glover. Any discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F3, Resolution R20-0121, a resolution to approve a final plat for the property legally described as a tract of land located in the southwest quarter of Section 25, Township 14 North, Range 11 East of the 6 p.m., Sarpy County, Nebraska, generally located on the northeast corner of Highway 370 and Highway 50. The applicant is Ryan Companies. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R20-0121? Motion by Councilman Ingberg. Second by Councilwoman Klug. Any proponents? I will note for the record that the applicant's representatives are here. Are there any opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F4, Resolution R20-0122, a resolution to approve the Willa Subdivision Agreement. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R20-0122? Motion by Councilman Stubbe. Second by Councilman Ingberg. Are there any proponents? Opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. The fourth of the 5 items, Resolution R20-0123, resolution to approve the Willa Planned Unit Development Agreement. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R20-0123? Motion by Councilman Jaworski. Second by Councilman Klug. I think. Okay. Proponents? Opponents? Council discussion. Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F6, Resolution R20-0124. A resolution to approve a waiver of maximum permitted sound levels for that part of the property legally described as a tract of land located in the southwest quarter of Section 25, Township 14 North, Range 11 East of the 6 p.m., Sarpy County, Nebraska, proposed to proposed to be platted as Lot 1 Willa, generally located on the northeast corner of Highway 370 and Highway 50. The applicant's Ryan Companies. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R20-0124? Motion by Councilman Jaworski. Second by Councilman Glover. Any proponents? Opponents? Council discussion. Mr. Sunday.
Could someone explain what's going on with that?
Mr. Sturzma, could you explain the waiver?
What are the noises from? How loud are they going to be?
So the noise waiver, I think in this particular case, it's in the event that the college site, the Metro Community College site has a residential component, then there would be an extra limitation on the sound that's allowed. And so this covers them in that event. And as we looked at it, the sound from the highway would actually be higher than what they would be producing. And yet I think they want to be particularly cautious to make sure they don't get caught out if residential ends up getting developed next to them.
Okay, so is there some decibel level that they're limited to? And what is that? And how much over do they want to be able to go?
And I'd have to look up the number exactly, but there's a limitation on the number of decibels over the evening hours, and they want to operate 24 hours. So, if you give me a second, I can look up the number.
Yeah, technically, it's limited to 55 decibels during the evening hours. They're anticipating with their truck activity that it might be 58. So
Okay.
just 3 decibels over, but they again want to make sure that they cover everything.
Could we amend to limit how much they can go over? I mean, they say they're only going to go over by 3 decibels. I'm hesitant to vote for this if they can just have carte blanche to go as loud as they want.
Mr. Sturzma.
I don't know that it's a unlimited.
Can I propose an amendment that they not be allowed to go over more than 10% of what the current limitation is?
Bear with us 1 second. I think Mr. Sturzma was looking at one item in the staff report.
So the permit says intermittent occurrences of up to 58. So I don't interpret this to mean that they have the ability to go to any level. It's that they can meet an average of 58 versus the 55.
So that's the way it reads already?
That's my understanding, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions, discussion? If not, please vote.
Eight ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you for the question. Motion passes. Item F7, Resolution R20-0125. This is a public hearing and a vote. A resolution to approve a comprehensive plan amendment to amend the future land use map for the 156th and Capehart Road sub-area. The applicant's the City of Papillion. This is a public hearing. I'll open it. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? I'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R20-0125? Motion by Councilman Stube. Second by Councilman Gaines. There was a discussion. I went to the Planning Commission and I actually presented on behalf of the city why we were doing what we're doing and gave the history of it. And there was an opponent that came forward during the Planning Commission, and they just had one concern. The Planning Commission did give an approval recommendation, but I think what they raised was a valid issue, so I actually want to throw out a request maybe for a motion to amend. And let me explain real quick. If you reference the future land use map that we're voting on, there is a yellowish jagged line in there that is referred to as the proposed Ridgeline Boulevard. And if you participated in the comprehensive plan meetings and public sessions over the last year and a half, you know there was a big, long discussion about leveraging the ridge line across the county and creating a boulevard system around there. And that's still the intent, but since we're just doing, and so the proposed ridge line in this sub-area map is that boulevard, but without seeing the whole context of the discussion and how it works as a whole, there was a concern of just this little segment. Was it kind of out of place and did it work? And it could negatively affect the marketing of some of the industrial area out there without that broader context. I thought that was a valid discussion, especially when they're doing site selecting and trying to sell that land. So I would like to request a motion to amend this just to remove the reference to the proposed Ridgeline Boulevard. It will come back to the council in the discussion of the full comp plan update that it will have, I don't know, 4 or 5 months from now. So is there a motion to remove the reference to the proposed Ridgeline Boulevard? Motion by Councilman Klug, second by Councilman Glover. Are there any proponents or opponents on that? Any council discussion? Mr. Mumgard.
I guess I have a question. If we remove it and then they go ahead and they start selling and buying the properties without that in there, are we then, will we then be stopped from adding that in later because of the reasonable expectations they could claim as to the use of that property?
Good question. I'll look for Mr. Sturzma to respond. A little bit from my perspective, it's not in our current future land use map, so by pulling it out, we're kind of leaving it as it is, that industrial area. We're not really changing that in the future land use. So to come back later and add it in the full context, I don't see we're blocking that. But Mr. Sturzma, the effect in the meantime.
Well, you're both right. I mean, it's a chicken and egg. Is it better to have it now and have objections and have it maybe limit some opportunity of the seller, or is it better to put it in now and you know, reserve the right to put it in for later?
Well, here,
I'm gonna take my mask off,
Yeah.
and then I can answer better. I'm really struggling. If we leave it in now, I think there's some risk to not have it better defined, as the mayor said. It's in the plan. We had the same question after the meeting of, well, what does that mean to us? How strictly will that be enforced? And I can see where they had a valid concern as they market the property. But you are right. If we take it out now, it may be harder to put it back in later. In my opinion, I think that's okay, because then we have a better opportunity to vet it. The landowners have a better opportunity to be involved in that process. And I don't know that the delay of a few months is going to be that much of a problem.
well, my fear is to take it out and then somebody, you know, starts using that property in a way that then stands in the way of adding it back. By taking it out, we have misled them into thinking that they have the ability to do that. So if we leave it in there and it then has the effect of somebody saying, I can't use that property the way I want to because this ridge line is in there, I would say, good. It's good that you know about it now. Don't start using that property in a way that's going to stand in the way of us having that ridgeline road, that ridgeline boulevard. So I guess I understand the developer's concern of, oh, you're making it harder for me to sell my property. And I'm saying, yeah, I'm making it harder because I don't want to mislead people. So I'm against taking it out.
Mr. Ingberg.
My question is about the boulevard. It's more general. It's a more general question. Would you rather we resolve the amendment first and then ask the question?
Yeah, since we have a motion on the floor, let's just deal with
Okay.
that one first. Any other discussion on the motion to amend? Ms. Klug.
Yeah, I guess my understanding is all we have had is possible discussions on this ridge line road. So it's not really a guarantee that we're even going to end up doing it. So in my mind, because it's not a guarantee that we're going to invest and move forward with that, are we misleading people in the other way? And we're going to have investors who are saying, well, wait a minute, you ended up not doing that and I could have been there. So for me, since this whole ridgeline is still, or boulevard, excuse me, Ridgeline Boulevard is still just kind of a dream, we're really presenting it more realistically without it being in there.
Thank you. Any other discussion? If not, please vote on the motion to amend.
Six yeas, 2 nays by Mumgarde and Stube.
Motion to amend passes, so the motion is amended. Council discussion on the motion, Mr. Ingberg.
I just have a quick question for Mr. Sturzman. By taking this action tonight, do we in any way limit the opportunity to use something like form-based zoning in this area? Or do we still have that opportunity to use that type of zoning?
I don't think it limits any of those options by taking it out. I think the concept was to take advantage of that high point across the county and take advantage of the views a road at that location might have. Based on the discussions we've had with our consultant, I think it was more valid or more beneficial in the residential areas, whereas most of this area where that Ridgeline Road is proposed is business park or industrial. There is a small area of residential. It would not prevent us from negotiating with any developer on including that road or some component of that road, and it would not prevent us from using zoning tools like form-based code or mixed-use developments or anything like that.
Any other discussion? If not, please vote.
Eight yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F8, Resolution R20-0126, a resolution to approve an extension of the West Papillion Catholic Community Preliminary Plat. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R20-0126? Mr. Gaines, motion. Second by Councilman Jaworski. Are there any proponents? Opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
Eight yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F9, Resolution R20-0128, a resolution to approve an agreement between the City of Papillion and the Papillion Community Foundation. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R20-0128? Motion by Councilman Klug. Second by Councilman Jaworski. Proponents. I see a number of the foundation folks here. You want to take an opportunity and give a commercial? It's been an unusual year with COVID, so go ahead and come up to the podium and state your name for the record. Again, we really appreciate the relationship. People aren't aware the Papillion Community Foundation is the one that's behind Papillion Days for decades, and they've really expanded their role and their mission, and Ms. Swartz, as the executive director, has really professionalized the board and doing some great things, and I know you're expanding your mission and your vision a little bit, so we really value the relationship, and I think that's what this agreement's honoring, so just want to give you an opportunity.
Okay, well, I'm Laura Schwartz. I'm the executive director of the Papillion Community Foundation. I have several of our executive board, including our new assistant director, Joe Hunter, our vice president, Jacob Betzworth, our past president, Margaret White, and our current treasurer, Dr. Mike Rickstalis. I just thank you for considering this agreement. I think it's important to how we're going to move forward with the foundation. Like the mayor said, we have a lot of really exciting things that we're doing. It was hard not having Papillion Days this year for all of us for a lot of different reasons, but it was the right thing to do. We are going to try to do Winter Wonderland, granted that we can do it safely. Obviously, The safety of the Papillion citizens is number one. So, but we're keeping our fingers crossed that we can continue to do that. But we have a lot of other exciting things, that we're working on right now. So we just did our very first direct mail. We've never done that to the citizens of Papillion, just trying to encourage giving to the foundation. And we have some big ideas and some big plans. I know I'm going to be talking to Phil and Amber here soon. So I just want to thank all of you for always supporting what we do, for coming to meetings and planning and listening to some of our crazy ideas sometimes. But we certainly want to do what's best for the city, and we appreciate the relationship that we have with you. So thank you very much for considering this. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Are there any opponents? And I'll just say one of the impetus behind this, again, the foundation and the city relationships really always just kind of been on a handshake. And some years in history, it's been an excellent relationship. Other times, it's maybe been a little tenuous as different people want to have control on each side. But I'll say it's probably the healthiest it's ever been. And with the growth we're having, that's why we thought it was probably wise. As long as it's a really healthy relationship right now, let's try to document why and put that into a longer-term agreement, as in really stabilize the healthy relationship as we grow. So that's the reason behind it. No other council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Thank you again. Item F10, Resolution R20-0129, a resolution to approve the Second Amendment to the Founders Ridge Subdivision Agreement. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R20-0129? Motion by Councilman Stubbe. Second by Councilman Glover. Are there any proponents? I will note that the applicant is here. Any opponents? Council discussion. Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F11, Resolution R20-0135, a resolution to modify the extents of the speed limit zones on Washington Street between Sheridan Street and 6th Street. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R20-0135? Motion by Councilman Gaines, second by Councilman Sunday. Are there any proponents? Opponents? Any council discussion? Mr. Gaines.
I just wanted to note that the Public Safety Committee did recommend approval of this. It's simply just moving 2 speed limit signs, 165 feet, 175 feet, to accommodate the digital speed indicators that we're placing on Washington Street. So,
thank you. Mr. Ingberg.
I just have a question or request, if you will. I assume this is part of the study that was ongoing. As we move forward, I don't know how much more there's going to be forthcoming, but for the 4 of us that aren't on the safety committee, if we could get some more information. I know I'm familiar with some of it, but the study is foreign to the 4 of us that aren't on that committee, and all of a sudden we just see a recommendation to approve something without seeing the whole picture, without seeing what's coming down the road. It would be nice if we had some information either ahead of time or something to base votes on. I accept and respect the recommendations, but as I sit here tonight, I don't know what's next or what's planned or what the study showed or anything. So just food for thought.
We'll have staff send out the study to the 4 that are not on the committee. And one of the items, I think a reason you maybe see a little bit of delay is a lot of the recommendations from the Public Safety Committee, and I'll have Mr. Gaines validate if I'm right or not, a lot of them actually depend on us getting the control of the highway. And of course, those negotiations are ongoing, and with COVID and the financial impact of the state, it's actually slowed down a little bit. But once we figure out about the control, then we can move forward with a number of the recommendations. Mr. Gaines.
So all of this is tonight is that the Public Safety Committee got together and we wanted to put more digital speed indicators on Washington Street. So in order to do that, the state of Nebraska said that we had to make a few changes. One of those things were removing the speed indicators at the flashing lights downtown at the crosswalk, because that was a violation of their policy and they wouldn't allow it. And then one of the other stipulations was that we move these speed limit signs and change the speed limit for whatever reason the state wanted them moved. But That's all that this is tonight, and anything going further, if we make recommendations, and like Mayor said, he'll send out the study, but this is kind of just about the digital speed indicators at this point.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Please vote.
Eight yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F12, Ordinance 1887, an ordinance to ratify all ordinances approved during council meetings held remotely pursuant to Executive Order Number 20-03, signed by Governor Ricketts on March 17th, 2020. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 1887? Motion by Councilman Jaworski, second by Councilwoman Klug. Any discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. It's all the regular agenda items. Committees, public safety did meet. Is there an update there?
Yeah, so in reference to those speed indicator signs, they are in stock, and the city is hoping to have them installed by August 11th, which is the first day of school. The second thing that we discussed was, again, the food truck ordinance and what is going to be the plan as far as what we're going to do behind. I think that the focus is kind of moving these food trucks back behind Twisted Vine. I believe that they've had at least one event where they parked them in the city parking lot and then had people out back. So that's an ongoing thing. So what the Public Safety Committee recommended is that we indefinitely table this food truck ordinance until we figure out what's going to happen back behind there as far as this, if is it going to be an entertainment district? Are they going to just put the trucks in the parking lot for now? So that is going to be, we're just recommending that that's tabled indefinitely when it comes back up. The city's going to come back with more plans and give us all options of what we think we should do back there. The third item that we discussed was the curfew ordinance that was passed. We did not come up with any recommendations tonight simply because there's a lot of different ideas. So some of the things that we do want to look at and the city's going to work on is changing some of the wording and better clarifying the definition of emergency, because there's some inconsistencies in the current ordinance as it's passed, where one section will say one thing, another section will say something else, and then they're contradicting each other, and that's not the way that we think it should be. We also feel like currently it's way too broad. We're exploring some options of maybe having the recommendation to declare emergency in the event of a riot would be a recommendation to the mayor from the Public Safety Committee, so that the one person's not in charge of all of it. One idea that was floated tonight was maybe that before we consider giving a recommendation, that we get briefed by the chief of police, so that the professionals that actually would benefit, or be enacting it or enforcing it would have the say. But we did not come to any resolution. We've asked the city to make some changes. We've asked them to reconvene the Public Safety Committee in the next 2, 4, 6 weeks and bring those changes back to us, whatever speed the city can get it done. And then we'll reconsider it at that point in time, because one of the things that was mentioned tonight is that we already have, the mayor has the power to declare emergencies for snowstorms, for natural disasters, and things like that. And so with the way that the world's changing, we do feel like, I believe it's a consensus of the committee, that we do feel like that there should be that power somewhere in case we need to enact it. It was also the opinion of the chief of police that if we were going to have rioting, that it would be beneficial to the police department to have some citizens off the street, to not have the police responding to, accidents and all those things, and it frees up officers to be able to take care of the issue. So we don't have any recommendations, but we are going to continue working on it and hopefully come up with something that is suitable and acceptable.
Thank you very much. Any comments from the floor?
Mayor.
Council comments, Mr. Jaworski.
Well, this is a perfect example of what Mr. Ingenberger was talking about. So when these changes are changed, the other 4 people need to see it. So we're in, because I'm not going to get surprised in the council chamber here. We all need to be on agreement on this. And I'm not gonna agree with something if I don't read it beforehand. So if it comes up like, kinda like this one did today, I'm fine with it. But something on that caliber where we're gonna be talking who's got the power to do what or whatever, that needs to hit everybody's desk before it comes to this chamber.
We'll take that from an administrative side, that
you.
if there is a committee meeting and they're discussing something very material and a recommendation's coming forth, we'll figure out a process then to brief the others so there's good dialogue and education going on. We'll take that from the administration side. Mr. Gaines, did you have something else?
Are you waiting to speak, Mr. Sunday?
Can you turn your mic off, Mr. Gaines? Mr. Sunday.
I was just going to add to what Councilman Gaines said. There was also some discussion about shortening the time span of that process to 48 hours instead of 72 hours on the curfew going forward. Not that we've decided on that, but we had, I think, serious discussion about that.
So, Mr. Jaworski, your point is very well made, and Mr. Ingberg, so we'll pick up something in the process to brief the others, so you are educated when it comes time to discussion and vote. Mr. Mumgard.
I would point out that we also had some discussion about just eliminating the mayor's ability to call a curfew, to regulate and install a curfew, simply because there's some riot or civil disobedience or civil commotion, and effectively put it back to the way it was before several weeks ago when we added that authority to the mayor. We had some discussion on that, made no decisions.
Thank you. Any other council discussion? If not, just from the last couple of weeks, just continue the weekly meetings with the health department. The main discussion I think people were anticipating last week was if there's going to be anything in regards to a mask mandate, because Lincoln had already put theirs in. Douglas had talked about it. But Lincoln, and at that point then, Sarpy did come and gave an update on how the process works. But so there no mask mandate at this point in time. We've had the United Cities conference calls. The legislature is in session, so we've been getting updates on there. The biggest thing in regards to legislature is LB 1222. If you're following it, that was the Municipal Oversight Act that Senator Wayne introduced as an emergency, where there would be a citizens review board over the police department. I did go down and testify in opposition to that as a representative of the United Cities, along with a large number of representatives. There are a lot of technical flaws in the bill. Not that the Papillion isn't opposed to some type of oversight if it's appropriate, but there were a lot of technical problems with the bill. After the hearing, Senator Wayne did indicate that he recognizes the technical flaws, so he's not going to have that come out of committee this session. He'll work over the season in regards to that, so we'll probably be involved in that. And then the wastewater agency continues to meet. The biggest item there is they want to update the growth management plan that says how do we grow into the new sewer area. And a couple of the changes that I think the county administration wants, Bellevue, Papillion, and I think Gretna have an issue with. It takes away some local control. So we're having some discussions around that, but those changes will come before you, I believe, before they're proposed. So those discussions are ongoing. And then the Sarpy County Economic Development had a quarterly meeting today. Since it was really the first time they'd gotten back together since COVID, there wasn't really a lot of updates from there. And then to reiterate, the B-cycle station, the second one was implemented. If you remember right, that was in the current year's budget from community betterment dollars, was to do the second station to expand there, so that's completing the approved project. And I believe there was a comment from the floor. If you want to come up to the podium and state your name for the record. Welcome.
Hi, thanks. Matt Perry, 803 North Beetle Street. I've had the opportunity to speak with several of you guys either on the phone or through email or in person, like with the mayor and the chief. And I appreciate the time you guys have given to me. And it's been entirely in regards to Ordinance 1886. I appreciate what was just said, in particular as it relates to the curfew portion of the ordinance. I don't want to solely make a constitutional argument for it, especially to a group of people who I think half of you are all attorneys. I think you guys could probably cite case law and case precedent where, Lincoln having suspended habeas corpus, during the Civil War, or
The majority that are not attorneys were just offended.
Sorry about that, yeah. I guess I would just encourage you guys, though, in moving forward with this, to not throw the baby out with the bathwater. You guys have all sworn oaths to uphold the U.S. Constitution, the Nebraska State Constitution. Our First Amendment is pretty clear on peaceful protests being protected expressly. I think any kind of a curfew ordinance that is going to, any curfew ordinance in general, it not only prevents violent riots or violent gatherings, it prevents gatherings at all, which should, I think, frankly, scare everybody. For anybody, any elected official to have that kind of power or ability should be very, very concerning. I think several of you have asked me, like, well, what's the alternative, or what would I suggest as opposed to the ordinance? And I would say education. Tell the people of Papillion when there's a threat, when there's an issue. Several of you had even mentioned to me, having been out the night that you guys enacted the curfew and seen that Papillion citizens were in their homes, all right? Like, they were notified that there was a potential threat, and they did the right thing, and they stayed home. So rather than, issue a decree and demand compliance, try to garner our support. I think people in Papillion want to do the right thing. We want our law enforcement officers to be able to do their jobs and to do it safely. It was mentioned as well, the idea of, we want to be able to keep the streets free if there's an emergency, or if there's a riot, if there's a tornado, things like that, so our first responders can get to the affected areas. That's a fair argument. But I think rather than, again, trying to just demand compliance from people, let's look at what laws are already on the books, for police officers to cordon off an area that's affected or restrict government. We saw it during the flooding, right? There were roads that were closed, there were barricades up, and there were citations issued if you went past those barricades. So I guess that would be my default, is let's see what's already there, what tools are already available to police. In the case of violent riots, we know it's already illegal to set a building on fire. It's already illegal to assault people. It's already illegal to throw a brick through a window. So rather than adding to the laws that are already there, let's examine what's already available and start from that point. I understand and appreciate the position you guys found yourselves in when I believe that, from what my understanding was, the chief had been informed of a potential riot, riots coming from Omaha down to Papillion. You guys were acting, doing what I think you guys believed was the best thing to do to keep people safe. But I think most of you guys are in agreement that it was probably a little too broad, a little too far. So I haven't made any, I haven't tried to hide that I think this just needs to go away. This ordinance needs to be returned back to what it originally was, the curfew for teenagers, which I think even under the previous wording, teenagers were exempt from the curfew if they were exercising their First Amendment rights. That wasn't even afforded to us in the new modified ordinance. So that would be my preference. I hope you guys are able to sort it out. But again, my encouragement to you guys would be, remember the oaths that you took. All of our laws, all of our ordinances, I believe, have to be filtered through that lens before it's even considered. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll just make a quick comment. Your comment that maybe it was too broad. Just because we do want to make sure what we're doing is right, that was the reason we did refer it to the Public Safety Committee, so we could get more eyes on it, be a little more deliberative, and make any proposed changes. And so if the Safety Committee does propose any changes, those will come back as an introduction, and there will be another public hearing, so there will be an opportunity to specifically talk on those as well. So appreciate you following it and keeping us in check. Any other council discussion? Mr. Gaines.
I just wanted to go back and address something. I was initially taken back by Mr. Ingberg and Mr. Jaworski's comments, and then after thinking about it for a minute, I realized what happened tonight. Just for you two, is that we didn't know prior to the Public Safety Committee meeting tonight that resolution was going to be on there to change the speed limits. So just education for people that are watching it. Normally, if whatever committee everybody's on, they will say, hey, we're going to make this recommendation, and everybody is aware of it and has time to be prepared for it. But none of the members, to my knowledge, were even aware that this was going to be on the agenda tonight until we got to the Public Safety Committee meeting. So we just looked at it, and it's part of our plan to put those signs, so we just offered recommendations. So initially I was like, well, but that's not the normal process, what happened tonight, so.
That is correct on that one, and I think the comment is valid for every committee, because every committee could be working on a material item, and we don't want the rest of the council to be surprised when it comes out, so I think it's still an important note. Mr. Ingberg.
Well, just to clarify too, I think where the miscommunication was the fact that, because the committee that I'm chairman of, the Finance Administration, many times it's just a regular course of business what we review. I think the reason why the reason I brought it up was I thought, because I knew no differently, that this was part of that study. And my question was, when we were going to be made aware of what the study determined. Normal things you guys deal with on that committee, I don't think we necessarily need to know in advance. But I think if it's something that's part of a study, or the curfew item, which has some strong opinions about one way or the other, that would be beneficial. But day-to-day things, I would expect you to notify me ahead of time, other than what we get in the council packet, But miscommunication, like I said, I thought this was part of the safety review, or that study that was done, and we hadn't seen any of that. So that's the difference.
Thank you. Any other council comments? If not, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Councilman Jaworski. Second by Councilman Glover. Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. We are adjourned.